The repressurization of the crew lock on the International Space Station is continuing to take place. It is now at about 13.2 pounds per square inch as it approaches that 14.7 PSI mark before they can open the hatches between the crew lock and the equipment lock to bring NASA astronauts Tracy Dyson and Mike Barratt back in and start removing their suits. Today's spacewalk was scheduled to take place and to complete the removal of a faulty electronics box known as the radio frequency group from a communications antenna on the starboard truss of the space station. They were also going to collect samples for analysis to better understand the ability of microorganisms to survive and reproduce on the exterior of the orbiting laboratory. The crew had successfully completed all of the pre-breathe protocols and had moved into the crew lock to depressurize and went all the way to vacuum, opened the EV hatch, and switched their suits to battery power. They switched to battery power at 8:46 a.m. Eastern, 7:46 a.m. Central. Shortly after this time, the crew reported a water issue. Shortly after this report, today's spacewalk was officially terminated due to a water leak stemming from the service and cooling umbilical unit on NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson's spacesuit. Since then, the crew has closed the EV hatch and have been working through procedures to repressurize the crew lock before returning inside the station's equipment lock.
Right here, it's just turning into a nice house.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Could you see, where's the station lights lighting up the ice?
Yeah.
Interesting.
More importantly, I saw the Terminator.
All right. Well, I'm glad you got a view at least. At least you got that.
You figured that.
That RFG really wants to stay out there.
Sure does, but I didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
The pressure inside the crew lock is now up to just under 14.3 pounds per square inch.
EV1, EV2 hatches coming up here shortly.
Copy.
Roger.
With the crew lock back up to pressure to match the space station, they are now preparing to open the hatch between the crew lock and the equipment lock.
The lights is moving. See if I can get my right waist tether off of the D-ring extender for him.
Yeah.
Make that a little easier.
And let's wait till Matt puts the water switch cards on.
Okay.
And the hatch is now open at 8:51 a.m. Central, 9:51 a.m. Eastern.
All right, Houston, the hatch is open, and I'm just going in there to look for water before I move anybody or anything.
Copy, we're listening.
Matt, you got those water switch cards? Yes.
So that's in the procedure, we'll get there. Tracy, can you point to where you think you saw water?
Here. And there's one on the hatch. One here. Yes. I think those might be drops, I'm not sure. See it? Here. Don't look at my leg. Thank you. You said I couldn't go back until I had RFC, so.
Oh, yeah.
This is. Then see where it says latch in Sharpie. It's really unimpressive now. But there's some on my gloves, I think, still, or at least it was the. Got it warm now. It's all pretty much evaporated.
In that airlock inspection, the only drops are on Tracy's side of the crew lock. Maybe 4 on the wall, or 3 to 4 millimeters in diameter. A small one on her visor, but there's very little water. I mean, there's like nothing. 4 or 5 drops on the wall. That's all I can find.
Houston, copies. Good report.
Pat, we're going to go ahead and start pulling them out if you're good with that.
Houston concurs.
Houston, if you start the steps 4 and 5 of 70-0155.
Hey, Matt, we're working step 4. We'll let the crew know once they're no longer hot mic'd. So right now they are still hot mic'd.
Copy. They understand they're still hot mic, and we're stepping into step 8 since we don't have any of the RFG stuff.
That's a good understanding.
After opening the hatch between the equipment lock and the crew lock, NASA astronaut Matt Dominic went into the crew lock portion where NASA astronauts Tracy, Dyson, and Mike Barratt are, just to inspect the crew lock for any water particles as a result of the SU.
Look for message 433 for procedure deltas. 433.
Copy 433.
To inspect for any water particles as a result of the water leak in the service and cooling umbilical unit on Tracy Dyson's spacesuit. Matt Dominic and Jeanette Epps, currently on your screen, will now work to move Tracy Dyson and Mike Barratt back into the equipment lock. After they are back in the equipment lock, they will remove the SAFER or simplified aid for EVA rescue from the back of their spacesuits. They will then begin some steps for suit doffing or removal.
TC and Mike, you are no longer hot mic'd.
And you can now see NASA astronaut Mike Barratt currently being moved from the crew lock to the equipment lock portion of the International Space Station's Quest airlock. The SAFER, or Simplified Aid for EVA Rescue, has been removed from the back of NASA astronaut Mike Barratt's extravehicular mobility unit, or EMU, which is the white spacesuit that he's currently wearing. You can now see.
Houston airlock on 1. Understand the messages on board?
Paper messages on board, number 433.
Can you give me a step where I need to start looking at that message? Because I want to keep moving with the crew.
Yeah, some of them are going to be pretty apparent and related to the RFG. So in step 54 is probably where you see a delta. That's just a stowage step. And then look closely on the rest of the steps.
I'm not going to look at that message until I get to step 53. Does that work?
That'll work, Matt.
And yeah, I think the only thing we didn't do is we didn't take photographs, but there was really nothing significant other than water. I can get a picture of a water droplet if you want it.
We're all set, Matt. Your description was really, really helpful.
And then the savers are getting packaged up. Jeanette and I are going to focus on Mike and TC, and after that, Team Starliner is going to go in there and do your video tour for the IV hatch and the airlock. Does that work for you guys?
That works for us. Thanks.
Both NASA astronauts Mike Barratt and Tracy Dyson have had their SAFERs, or Simplified Aid for EVA Rescues, removed from the back of their suits, and they're now working through procedures to begin doffing or removing their EMUs.
Airlock Houston, I want to give you an update on COM here. We're having some KU issues on TDRS 275. We're coming up on a 275 pass here pretty soon. So big picture, we're not going to get video down from you. That's not a constraint. We could come back on board later for the video tour.
Say time for post TDRS 275, the GMT time we can expect it to be good?
Checking. Right, Matt, GMT 1434, we're going to be on another satellite.
1434, will kill.
On your screen, you're seeing NASA astronaut Mike Barratt on the left-hand side and NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson on the right-hand side in the extravehicular mobility units. They had donned those spacesuits several hours ago and completed pre-breathe protocols, moved into the crew lock, depressurized the crew lock down to vacuum, opened the EV hatch, and turned their spacesuits on to battery power. Shortly after setting their suits to battery power at 8:46 a.m. Eastern, 7:46 a.m. Central, the crew reported a water issue. After some brief troubleshooting on the ground, the spacewalk was officially terminated due to this water leak that was resulting from the service and cooling umbilical unit on NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson's spacesuit. The service and cooling umbilical is an umbilical that attaches the EMU or extravehicular mobility unit to transfer electrical power, hardline communications, oxygen, cooling water, and feed water between the International Space Station and the EMU or extravehicular mobility unit. At no time was the crew in any danger during this water leak, but as a result of the termination of the spacewalk, the EV hatch was closed and they began the process to repressurize the crew lock, bringing it back up to 14.7 pounds per square inch. They then opened the hatch between the crew lock and the equipment lock and moved NASA astronauts Mike Barratt and Tracy Dyson back into the equipment lock, where they removed their SAFERs, or simplified aid for EVA rescue, and have now begun doffing or removing their suits. We will continue to provide live coverage of the suit doffing procedures until their helmets have been removed. Can now see NASA astronaut Butch Wilmore in the center of your screen. He's part of NASA's Boeing crew flight test currently on board the International Space Station. He is capturing some photos of the glove of NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson's EMU or extravehicular mobility unit. As a result of today's spacewalk termination, they are working to gather some extra imagery to send to teams here on the ground to investigate and troubleshoot and really determine a cause of the leak in the service and cooling umbilical unit. We are now in a handover between satellites for the tracking and data relay satellite system. While we won't have video for approximately 20 minutes, expecting to regain it at 9:34 a.m. Central, we will still have audio communications with the crew as they continue to work through steps to doff or remove the spacesuits from NASA astronaut Tracy, Dyson, and Mike Barratt. We have also received word from today's spacewalk officer that today's spacewalking time was 31 minutes, and this is the time from switching the suits to internal battery power, which took place at 7:46 a.m. Central, 8:46 a.m. Eastern, to the time that the repressurization of the crew lock took place at 8:17 a.m. Central, 9:17 a.m. Eastern. With this 31 minutes, that brings NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson's spacewalking time up to 23 hours and 20 minutes across 4 EVAs. And for NASA astronaut Mike Barratt, that brings him up to 5 hours and 37 minutes of spacewalking time across 3 EVAs.
Airlock Houston on 1 for Deltas.
Houston, go ahead with Deltas.
Matt, we currently don't have video, so we're just going to feed these deltas to you now. In step 61 and 63, it has you removing the absorbent materials. We want you to leave those installed for now. And when you get to it later, leave SCUs connected. And that's for both suits.
For everybody.
Affirm for everybody.
Okay. We got a lot of Deltas Houston what we're tracking here. The first Deltas I see are in 47 to 50, and then 61 to 63.
We copy. Good. That's a good understanding of the Deltas. And as a reminder, Matt.
Well, Houston, my XGP does not have a 63, so that's easy to not to do. And 61 is just taking the helmet absorption pads out, so we'll leave those in the helmets, no problem.
Yep, that's good. And step 54 for the PGT batteries, those could go in the mesh bag, so that's the other Delta.
Okay, PGT is going to a mesh bag. Okay. We're going to probably try to get these folks out of the suits, and then we might have to do clips later for those things. There's a lot of things in my head. Appreciate it.
We copy, no worries.
Houston, all the pics we took today are on SSV6, and that includes the glove pictures, and the only thing of note was inboard right side of Tracy's index finger. So the inboard side of Tracy's index finger, is there anything that might be of question?
Thanks, Butch. We'll look at SSE 6. Appreciate the words.
Yeah, I think I said left hand. Just to clarify, it is the left hand, in the inboard side of the left index finger.
Copy. Left hand, we were just asking about that ourselves.
We continue to be in a loss of signal for the video feeds coming from the International Space Station due to a transfer of ground stations, but we still have audio communications with the crew on board the station as they continue to work through steps to remove the extravehicular mobility units currently on NASA astronauts Tracy, Dyson, and Mike Barratt following today's 31-minute spacewalk. The spacewalk time officially began at 7:46 a.m. Central when they switched their suits to battery power. The crew had opened the hatch of the thrust airlock before reporting a water issue. This water issue was traced to a water leak in the service and cooling umbilical unit on NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson's spacesuit. As a result of this issue, U.S. Spacewalk 90 for today was terminated. The crew then worked with ground controllers to repressurize the crew lock section of the Equest airlock before returning inside the station's equipment lock, where they are currently working through those steps to remove their spacesuits. For today's spacewalk, they had planned to complete the removal of a faulty electronics box known as a radio frequency group from a communications antenna on the starboard truss of the space station. They were also going to collect some samples for analysis to understand the ability of microorganisms to survive and reproduce on the exterior of the orbiting laboratory. The spacewalk was expected to last about 6.5 hours. Teams here in Mission Control Houston are continuing to troubleshoot and work through steps to better understand the water leak issue that was reported, and the crew aboard the International Space Station are also working to collect imagery of the crew lock and of the spacesuits to send to teams here on the ground to inspect further. While today's spacewalk was terminated early, the crew was at no time in any danger. At the time of the spacewalk termination, it was unclear how much water was left in the water tanks of her suit, which is why the spacewalk was terminated early as a precautionary measure. The service and cooling umbilical on NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson's suit that was experiencing that water leak is an umbilical that transfers electrical power, hardline communications, oxygen, cooling water, and feed water between the International Space Station and the extravehicular mobility unit. We will continue to provide live coverage all the way until we receive video views back and we confirm that NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson and Mike Barratt have had their helmets removed. We expect to regain video feed here in about 12 minutes at 9:34 a.m. Central, 10:34 a.m. Eastern. On your screen now, you can see Flight Director Rebecca Wingfield towards the bottom. She is the lead flight director for today's spacewalk operations. She's currently speaking with the flight controllers here in the International Space Station Flight Control Room as they continue to discuss today's spacewalk and the issues that arose and also work through troubleshooting and next steps. We now have confirmation that NASA astronauts Tracy, Dyson, and Mike Barratt are out of their spacesuits following today's 31-minute spacewalk. U.S. Spacewalk 90 was going to complete the removal of a faulty electronics box from a communications antenna on the starboard truss of the space station. They were also planning to collect samples for analysis to better understand the ability of microorganisms to survive and reproduce on the exterior of the orbiting laboratory. While the spacewalk was intended to last 6.5 hours, it was terminated shortly after the suits were set to battery power at 7:46 a.m. Central, 8:46 a.m. Eastern. The crew had opened the extravehicular hatch on the Quest airlock before reporting a water issue. This water issue was traced to a water leak in the service and cooling umbilical unit on NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson's spacesuit. At no time was the crew in any danger, but they did make the decision to terminate the spacewalk as it was unclear how much water was left in the water tanks of Tracy Dyson's suit. The crew then closed the EV hatch and worked with ground controllers to repressurize the crew lock section of the Quest airlock before returning inside the station's equipment lock. The crew then worked to remove their spacesuits, and they have successfully removed from their extravehicular mobility unit or EMUs to complete today's spacewalk activities. The official duration of today's spacewalk was 31 minutes. That brings NASA astronaut Tracy Dyson's total spacewalking time up to 23 hours and 20 minutes across 4 EVAs, and it brings NASA astronaut Mike Barratt up to 5 hours time across. Mission Control Houston will continue to spend the day troubleshooting and collecting imagery and data from the crew aboard the International Space Station to better understand what exactly happened with the service and cooling umbilical unit and the water leak that took place today. With that, we will conclude our coverage of today's spacewalk activities. This is Mission Control Houston.